A few months ago, I was driving from my friend's house at 11 p.m. I was heading down a small one-way street that is always dead after business hours. Not paying much attention because this road was a road I drove down regularly. A very thin woman with scraggly gray hair, maybe in her 50s, that I hadn't immediately noticed on the sidewalk, suddenly walked into the road in front of my car. I hadn't been driving very fast, so I stopped to let her cross the street. I wonder why she didn't wait for me to pass, as there were no cars behind me. She didn't cross all the way. She stopped in the middle of the street, then turned and walked right up to my car, put her hands on the hood, and leaned forward so she was locking eyes with me through the windshield. Her pupils were huge, her expression was angry, and she stared at me unblinkingly. She almost looked demonic. My reaction was pretty automatic. I started shaking my head and loudly repeating, "Nope, nope," to try and signal that I didn't want to interact with her. She didn't move at all, and for a split second, I wondered if she needed some kind of help, but the look in her eyes and the way she didn't say anything put me completely on edge. I threw the car in reverse and lurched away from her. She stood up straight in the middle of the road, stared at me for a second longer, then turned and nonchalantly walked back down the same side of the street she had come from. I put the car on drive and hurried past her and continued home. After the fact, I decided that this lady was probably really high on something, and maybe she didn't want to cause me any harm, but the expression in her eyes, as they bore into mine, was beyond creepy. To give a little context, I used to work in an apartment complex. As a result, I've had my fair share of creepy encounters. Most residents keep to themselves and don't cause issues, probably about 95%, but the other 5% took up almost all of my time. Isaac was one of the 5%. When he first rented his apartment, he definitely had stoner vibes, but he was nice enough and passed his background check. Almost immediately, however, he started causing issues. The lady next door complained she could smell his smoke constantly. The guy downstairs complained he could hear his stereo all hours of the day and night. Another resident accused him of following him home one night. The police were regularly called there at breaking up fights between him and his girlfriends. We caught him hiding 2 large dogs in his apartment, and he would regularly let them run loose, which ultimately resulted in another dog and 2 people being attacked. He accidentally discharged a gun in his apartment once. Needless to say, he caused a lot of problems. At first, he was very apologetic, said he would make an effort to remedy problems, but things kept getting worse, and after a year of weekly calls or notices from the office, he eventually became standoffish. One morning, I received a call from Isaac letting me know he'd broken up with one of his girls, and she wouldn't leave the apartment. He asked me to personally come up to remove her. I'm a small woman, so even if I wanted to take the risk, I physically wouldn't be capable of wrestling an angry woman out of his apartment. I suggested he called the police. He then asked if I could make a maintenance man come up to remove her. I offered to call the police on his behalf, but Isaac said he didn't want to involve them and hung up. A few hours later, Isaac came down to the office with a jump drive and said he needed to print out a 50-plus page document. Residents weren't technically allowed to use our office printer, but on rare occasions someone asked to. I usually didn't say no. But between Isaac becoming such a problem and how large this document was, I told him I couldn't print his document. I gave the excuse that our paper or toner was monitored and we would get in trouble for printing such a large document. Not liking my answer, he started screaming about how it was bullshit. He accused me of being useless, bringing up my refusal to fight his ex and power tripping. He called me a fucking bitch multiple times and said someone needed to bring me down a peg. I was pretty over him at this point and told him that if he wasn't going to behave like a child that he needed to leave. He told me I couldn't make him. Bluntly, I told him he would leave or I would call the police and have him removed. I also told him I would ban him from the office going forward. Normally, I tried to kill the residents with kindness, but his lease was ending in a week and I didn't care anymore if he hated me. My threat had seemed to work. He angrily knocked my pen holder over, then slammed both doors hard as he left. The following morning, a cop was waiting for me when I got to work. He asked me if Isaac was a resident, and I confirmed that he was. The officer explained that the body of a teen had been discovered the day before, and Isaac was a prime suspect. He was the last person to text a kid, asking him to meet where his body was found shortly after the message. The police believed Isaac had been paid to kill him, based on the timing of the text and when the boy was discovered. Isaac would have had to left my office and gone directly there to kill him. Ultimately, the police wanted to use Isaac's move-out date as an opportunity to try and get him. To nobody's surprise, he did not show up. When I walked through his apartment for damage, I found a bank receipt from the day of the murder. Someone has wired him $17,000. I thankfully never saw Isaac again. He was caught in another country a few months later and is now in prison. I don't live in the USA, but I was born there and visit once a year. This incident occurred, I would say, maybe 2 to 3 years ago. I visited my cousins in Houston, and it's my first day there. I'm in the guest room drawing and listening to music where I hear very faint knocks at the corner of my room. My cousins jokingly said that they think a man lives in the attic, but I brushed it off because my cousins are always very mischievous. As time went on very slowly, the knocks grew closer, and I noticed it only when it covered half the distance between me. There was a pause, and at this moment I had stopped everything. Then the knocks came at me full speed. It was like those passive-aggressive knocks coming towards me. I got up and got out of the room. Weird walls in America, I guess. Distinctly remember thinking, this was my first encounter, first of many. Over the days I had started sleeping in the same room as my cousin, as it was much more fun. However, one night we were relaxing in the same guest room. I heard the knocks. We were making jokes and then we noticed the time was really late, 3 or 4 in the morning. We all decided to pull an all-nighter. Then we heard a loud bang. Imagine slamming a door as hard as you possibly can, and that's exactly what we heard. We are all weirded out because the only people in the house were me, my 2 cousins, my sister, and another cousin upstairs in their room, and my cousin's parents who were sound asleep. No one was downstairs, and if they were, why would they slam the door? We all go outside our room and are trying to spook each other out until we hear something on all fours running up the marble stairs towards us. We all book it into my cousin's room and lock the door. We hear something run past the room door, and that's it. We all slept eventually. We asked my sister and other cousin if it was them, but they said they didn't hear a thing. My cousin's parents said they didn't hear any banging of any door. My cousins have now moved out of that house, but this memory was always a mystery to me. Any explanations? What do you guys think? Earlier this week, I was walking my dogs at 11 p.m. while home alone. I saw a deer cross the road at the exit of my neighborhood and started walking towards it. I saw an SUV come down the road and stopped to look at the deer on the side of the road, but it was very strange because he turned around to go back the way he came, and he was staring at me from his car, partially hanging out of his window. I did not make eye contact, walked away so I didn't get the best identifying descriptions. As the car was leaving, he made 2 U-turns and was shining his lights at the deer. I did not stop watching his car. I only really saw the back of it, because I thought he was going to get out and kill the deer right in front of me. He then drove down the road further, but would keep stopping every few feet. I kept watching and did not turn my back, because I had feelings he was watching me while he was stopping, because at this point I think the deer had ran off. I thought this was a really weird occurrence and started walking straight home once his taillights disappeared to tell my family what had just happened. As I was approaching my house, I noticed the same car had now come into my neighborhood and went down the road past my house. I had a really bad gut feeling already, and this threw me into a full-blown panic. I ran inside, locked the doors, and called my husband while watching out the window behind the curtain. Probably 10 minutes passed, 11:30 p.m. at this point, and my neighbor came home. As soon as their car pulled into the driveway across from mine, I saw that same car leave very quickly. It seemed like he was maybe waiting or stalking down the road. My husband told me to call the police. When I called the police, I told them that I thought it was a Chevy, but all I knew is that it was an older SUV, and they sent out a patrol. While I was waiting, I saw what I believed was the same white SUV fly down the road past my house once more. The police came through the neighborhood with their lights on, and as soon as the cop got near my house, the same SUV drove away. However, that second occurrence was a Ford SUV, but the cop told me he saw a man fitting the description I'd given. So we went after him, and I have never heard or seen anything since. I've been really shaken up and didn't even go outside yesterday. Luckily, I have 2 cops who live in my neighborhood, but still a scary thought of what could have happened. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the end. Please be sure to subscribe for future content and like the video as it helps it perform at a much higher level. If you want your story featured on an upcoming video, email me at the email in the description box below. And until we meet again, stay sinful.